Okay, good, it's working. Hello, welcome back to Book from Scratch. This is where I'm writing a book live for you to watch an author do that process. Now, I do have to apologise because I think on a previous stream I said that I might be the first person to ever do this. That is completely wrong, and I have to apologise to every other writer who has been live streaming their own stuff. This isn't. I'm not the only person doing this, but I'm going to continue it anyway because if you want to write your own book one day, it's actually a good idea just to go to many different sources for your inspiration, for your tips, hints, and tips. Because writing is there's no right way to write. There's obviously there is such a thing as good English, good Spanish, good Mandarin, good French, German, Nepalese, Japanese. I'll start right there. There's a good way to. There is the right way to, use your language effectively to communicate something. But there's no wrong way to write a book. Not really. I mean, if as long as it reads well and it gets your themes and plot points and across, and it fleshes out characters. There's nothing wrong with it. There's different styles of writing as well. So I'm going to keep doing this so that maybe my style and the way I talk to you and how I write my book will be useful for you, and you can see how that would work for you too. So I'm not going to go back and rehash anything else. You're going to have to watch the other videos about how I planned up to this point. I've done chapter 1 of this book, and I will tell you this: it's an anthology, but it's not really an anthology, because an anthology is usually different stories within the same universe or different stories with a central theme. No, this is still an anthology because it's about 10 books, and I'm going through all these different genres, like a crime, like a murder mystery, like a thriller, like a horror, and a sci-fi, and a fantasy, and a rom-com, stuff like that, because I want to test myself. I want to show you how that's done to write those particular genres of books, and also, imagine this as like a 10-episode TV series, and each episode essentially in a wider book that's the complete narrative, the complete epic saga of what's going to happen in this one. So that's what I'm up to in this live stream. However, I will just take the time just to show you something quickly. I said I'm not the only person doing this, so I think it's very helpful for me to, and since I'm planting my flag on the hill that says you must try other writers, read as widely as possible in order to be a better writer, why not promote someone else who's doing this? So I'm going to talk. This is another guy. He's called Donald Wilson. I came across him. He's also writing a book live. There's actually, where is it? There you go. Wait, is that it? That's it there. Right here. This is his playlist. He's like a playlist featuring writing a book live. So Donald Wilson, at Donald Wilson on YouTube. Try his channel. In fact, let me subscribe to it right now because that would be helpful. And give him a go. He's writing his own thing, and he's probably got a different style. He's probably got different hints and tips. He's got his own experience, and I'm sure he will be helpful too. So why not give that a go? And I'm going to try and look for more, and also, let you know about them, because I feel that you should go to them and see how they write and continue, and take what you can from their particular way of writing a book. There's nothing else to say about it. Speaking of books, right beneath me here, if you're on the YouTube, or I guess somewhere if you're looking at this later on TikTok, is my book Half Human. But it's not my book. It's actually a first in publishing. It's a book written by me and a school, and it's been published. This is, I think, the first of its kind. It's a book written by a school, published, and is out there in the world. So give Half Human the Prison Key a go. We'll have the next book out very soon, within the next 3 months, we hope. So if you like it, you don't have to wait ages for the next one. And without further ado, let's get started. Let's continue, actually. So in where I got to, we did the chapter 1 of this book, introducing Fortis and Huxton, where they get a taste for being an adventurer. But they kind of got a taste for it, but not in the normal way. They didn't solve the problem by being like heroes who summon a vast amount of magic power in a moment, or find the strength within and beat back the enemy. Instead, they managed to get like the whole town on board with doing the battle themselves, because traditionally it's that you have a few who defend the village and against like an invading army, in this case like animated armor kind of thing. And what Fortis and Huxton managed to do was, rather than say join that fight and be the crucial element that gets victory, they instead point out quite wisely that why doesn't the whole town just get involved? Because if they all get involved, they are a small number of attackers relative to the village. But if they all get involved, they'll easily take them out. And it's kind of the start of the main theme of this entire book, which is, rather than doing... if they just try to solve some of the worlds that we're in, the universe that we'll create, in fact, you can kind of see it there. It's actually a world that's on the back of a giant snail called Snakar, okay? For the time being, might rename him. Anyway, rather than just, do traditional fantasy stuff to solve the problems, they actually just, like, resolve some issues. So they're going to, like, throughout the book, they might... appease or solve some problems that the goblins are having, so the goblins feel no need to join the main bad guy, and that cuts out a gigantic portion of the bad guy's army. Stuff like that. They're gonna, if they solve the problems that the world experiences, then it's easier for the heroes to defeat the main villain. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have a big epic struggle at the very end, because there's going to be a bunch of people who wanted things to be traditional. They wanted to be seen as the heroes, and they're not anymore, because they're not getting the credit for defeating the main bad guy. And we've already seen Fortis and Huxton do something like that by getting the whole village to go, yeah, wait, why don't we all just get involved? It makes it so much easier for us to defeat these villains if we are the ones who attack en masse and use our own strength and skills, and the guards of our town don't just have to be the only ones who do it. And it works. And it's kind of like how in let's take Lord of the Rings, for example. There's actually not that many in this. Well, I'll talk about it from the film perspective. In the Return of the King, Theoden says 6,000 swords, less than half of what I wanted. And you kind of think, well, if the other 6,000 are shown, that's less than half of what he wanted. So let's say that he wanted 12,000. If he had those 12,000, then the battle at Minas Tirith would have been so much easier. And you kind of think, why weren't those 6,000 there? Maybe there was something Theoden could have been doing to get those 6,000 on board from the beginning. Maybe there's an issue that needs to be solved. Maybe he's not paying his riders enough, and maybe he should spread around the Rohan treasury a bit. Or like Denethor in Return of the King, how he's clearly a bad leader, yet everyone in Minas Tirith is still following him. And you'd think that could just be resolved if maybe the captain of the guard went, okay, just move Denethor into this room and pretend that he's in charge, and while he's doing that, we'll actually get Minas Tirith ready for battle. And then when the orcs march on Minas Tirith, they suddenly find that everyone's armed with a bow and arrow, and 10,000 arrows just fall on that huge mass of orcs, killing loads of them, and it would have just been better. And so it's like, solve the problem. The problem is Denethor being a weak ruler, so solve him now. It's so much easier later on. And that's the central theme. But where I'm at now is that Fortis and Huxton have decided they're going to go off and be adventurers, and I'm going to make them adventurers, going to come up with something better than that. And they want to begin their adventurous. But in the second chapter, it's like they wake up from like a real high from defeating the villains who appeared in that first chapter, but now they're wondering, can they do it? And I had a completely independent of this. I had this idea. In other words, to try and be a little bit more original. Let's increase the size of this window so you can see it. So my idea was that I think that they need a mentor. Okay, someone to help to teach them how to be heroes. Now, if I remember correctly, mentors in these kind of books are always kind of reluctant. So you got a Yoda-ish kind of one who's very reluctant to do it. You've got like Gandalf is not reluctant, but he's not really like keen. He's not really mentoring anyone, and he kind of needs to go off and do his own thing. So you've also got someone like we've kind of got like Obi-Wan, who is keen to mentor, but he's not very. Not to disparage Obi-Wan, but he's not very good at it. It's like, don't you think he should have been teaching Luke how to be a Jedi from the very beginning? And it doesn't help that not Obi-Wan, who's the other? Qui-Gon. Is that how you spell his name? Qui-Gon? Whatever. Qui-Gon was a very keen mentor. He was keen to teach who he thought was the chosen one, but he didn't get a chance, obviously, spoiler alert. But I think I want to write a mentor for them, and then therefore a new character who will be throughout the book, who is not reluctant. So, in fact, he's very keen. Reluctant. So, what I'm thinking is he'll be a hermit in nearby forest. And, sorry about my handwriting. I type all the time, so I'm not very good at, using my hand to write anymore. Should probably relearn. So he's not reluctant. He's a hermit living in a forest, and he's been waiting to teach. And I'm going to say that he's incredibly experienced. So he's got tons of XP. And he's got so much wisdom. So what's going to be different? So original. What's going to be so much different is that he is going to be a great teacher. And also, Fortis and Huxton are keen as well. Let's actually think about what this guy is going to look like before we continue. Get a little pencil. Let's go to... Right, I've got to think about what he looks like so I can describe him when I get to him. So, what do I... So he's got... Oh dear. He's going to... Oh, is it a he? Maybe it could be a she. Does it matter? What would Fortis and Huxton... What would be different? Like, you don't get many female mentors. Oh no, I can't do female because there's another character later on who is going to be their kind of not instructor, like what would you call it? Invigilator? Yeah, that's kind of like it. She follows Fortis and Huxton at a certain point in the journey because she's experienced and she can kind of protect them while training them as well. So it's her role to... She's like a high level. They're like down here, low level. But if you say, you guys go defeat this goblin clan, she can handle the goblin clan, but by being with them, she can be there to save them while they level up. It's like throwing a level 100 Pokemon out, immediately bring them back, then throw in... No, that's the wrong way around. It's like throwing a Magikarp out onto the Pokemon battlefield, immediately recalling them, then throwing in your level 100 and letting the Magikarp level up really quickly with all the XP the level 100 it would normally get. It's like that. So you can get your Gyarados as quickly as possible. It's like that. So Fortis and Huxton are put out there to try and do this mission, but she's always there helping them to get that XP and protecting them. So if that's the case, then this mentor can't step on her toes. So he'll be a he. He'll have to be... So he has to be old, okay? He'll have to be... In fact, I'll use the pen. He has to be old because... Why? Because he can't adventure. So he can't... Even though he's tons of experience and lots to teach, that way he can't get involved and do Deus Ex Machinas for them. So he can't adventure, just has to teach. Okay, so already these are some. When you write, if you plan your characters out, you'll realize that there's like boundaries that are now being created. Because if he's old, then he can't be in that case. Then he can't really be quick. He's gonna be slow. He's gonna. He might. But we don't want him to be too slow. We don't want him to be a hindrance either. So I just had this idea. We'll give him a steed. I'm going to say steed at the moment, but not necessarily a horse. It might be better for it to be a different kind of animal. But then that gets into a sort of silliness. Like if I let's say, so it shouldn't be like a brand new fantasy animal. It shouldn't be like he's riding on like a mongoose or something. No, it needs like a giant mongoose. It's got to be something that people do ride. But is okay. So a steed, but I'm going to put goat for the time being because I feel that. I just find goats to be funny animals, but like a big goat, massive horns that he rides. Old goat. So yes, definitely an old goat. An old goat's kind of steed, and that allows him to get around. Allows him to get around. Okay, so that's how he can stay with the group while not being able to fight and help them in that way. He's also got to be. So he also needs to keep. So I think a quirk would be he always has a lot of stuff. Like he brings his like library with him, his equipment, and that's what I meant by boundaries. By making him old, so he can't get involved because I don't want him to. There's like I realised there was a limit to how he can stay with. How can he like keep up? By giving him the steed, that's getting him past his old age, his arthritis or whatever. My question is, what do I want him to be like? I was kind of thinking like I could go like a wizard. Do I want him to be? I suppose what I should do is try and think what has never been done as a sort of mentor before. You obviously got Yoda, small. No one would think this guy was some great general, but he clearly was. But then you get Gandalf, this old wizard guy who we instantly think must be a mentor and smart and wise because we were pre-programmed through other like texts and storytelling to think the old guy is the font of wisdom. I don't want to make up a new fantasy race, so maybe, but I kind of want him to have been around the block. What about an elf? Because elves are usually aloof, and they're over there being really pretty in high place, in like like a Rivendell kind of place, or like a one with nature kind of place. Like because and elves are somewhat functionally immortal, long-lived, so I'm going to make him an elf. Like a really old elf, and he's just been looking forward for the chance for himself to mentor someone, and no one's ever come to him before. So yeah, a really old elf. Like, okay, it's possibly time to start thinking about having at least some idea of what he looks like. I think then if we give him, obviously he's going to be really tall, because elves usually are. I think he should have like really long grey hair, but like ridiculously long. Like he's been waiting for so long, he hasn't really cut his hair, but and that long elven, lovely silvery hair has like overgrown. And I suppose a part of it will be he starts trimming it. So he starts cutting it as you go. Starts cutting it as book progresses. He become progresses whatever. Like I said, he becomes a real silver fox. What does he dress as though? Well, I suppose if he's been waiting to go adventuring, to teach an adventure, he's got like rugged clothes on. He's not like he's not dressed in long flowing robes. Goodness me, it looks like I've drawn him with a like he's going fishing. Not long flowing robes. Practical clothes. So he's always been ready to go. Well, he's still an elf, so he'll still look relatively young. In this universe, they're not. I won't paint elves as being immortal, just long-lived. Does he have a weapon on him? I'll give him a crossbow, because then he's really good at it. But a crossbow rather than a sword, because then that implies he can get really into the action. But if I give him a crossbow, a sort of long-range weapon, well, yeah, short range, but a distance weapon means he stays away while being in the fight if he needs to. Okay, so that's our new character for today. But I'm not actually going to get to introduce him because I've got to get there first. Although, actually, one of my writing tips is you do not have to write in order. Jump around. It actually, like if you've got writer's block, one tip is actually to go to the part you want to write and write it, because then you're at a bit that you really want to do, and that encourages you to write. The words start flowing because you want to write this particular scene. I actually did it here. I wanted to write this scene. If you didn't see last episode that we did, sorry it was so long between episodes, by the way. Actually, it was last year. That I wanted to do this bit where Snakar actually sometimes looks down on the world on his back because he wants to view something that he knows to be important. And I wanted to write that bit down because I just liked the idea. But I'm actually going to ignore that and get back into the main thing today. So we've just finished this bit where Fortis was thinking, should I be doing this? And it was like, sorry, if I go back, I'll show you. So I started off in Huxton's mind as he contemplates what he decided to do. And then it goes to Fortis, who contemplates the same thing from a different angle. So now they basically meet up. Where would they meet up in the morning? So they're getting out of bed, their respective beds. What would be the first thing they do? Probably to help tidy up a little bit more. So what would they be fixing? Chopping wood. Too obvious. Perhaps they could be like dragging armor into certain places. Later that morning. Okay, we'll do this. Later that morning, both boys. By the way, Huxton is a human. Fortis is an orc. Sorry, let's zoom in so it's easier for you guys to see. Much as I can. Good. Later that morning, the boys found themselves tidying up the village. My goodness, tidying up the village. So I'm just going to do one more thing so I know it's ready. Not articles. Right, later that morning, the boys found themselves tidying up the village, gathering up pieces of void art. I'll call it void. The animated art I called Void Warriors because there's obviously a clear void within them. That's why I thought it sounded cool. Put it in the chat if you don't think it's cool and you can suggest something else. Later that morning, the boys found themselves tidying up the village, gathering up pieces of Void Warriors strewn about the central court. I'll call it courtyard for now. Central courtyard. Huxton lifted both hands to lift helmet out of the mud and stared into eye sockets. Held a breastplate in front of him with one arm. Now, the reason I wanted to, this is one thing you want to look for in your writing and do, is that you want to show, not tell, and you'll have to decide how much showing and telling is actually necessary. People sometimes telling is fun to read. By the way, exposition is sometimes one of the best parts of a book to read, especially if you're waiting for more information. And you want the secret to be revealed about something, or you want more information, you want more fleshed out details. So that exposition is really good. But I hope what I've done here is two things. Huxton used both hands to lift the helmet out of the mud and stared into the empty eye socket. So I'm sort of showing you that he's, by looking into this warrior, you can almost feel his contemplative mood. And Fortis is holding a breastplate in front of him with one arm. So he's in the same, they're both in the same sort of position. They're sort of looking at what they're doing. Hang on. Held a breastplate in front of him with one arm and let his free hand brush over a rent in the metal. So he's scraping across where maybe a weapon went into the armor during the battle, or maybe back in history, because these void warriors could have been around for centuries. So you get the contemplative sort of note from both of them, but also Huxton used both hands to lift the helmet, relatively small piece of armor, so that he needs those two hands. But Fortis is holding out one hand a breastplate, which is a much bigger piece, and has one free hand, is able to sort of have a look at it, inspect it in more detail, showing a difference in strength, which will become apparent throughout this book and the whole series, about how Fortis is going to be a sort of stronger character, and Huxton will be a bit more, he'll be more cerebral, more magic orientated. And actually at some point we're going to flip that back for some character growth. So what you describe, that's an example of not needing to tell people. Huxton, who was weaker than Fortis, had to use both hands to lift the helmet out of the mud. No, if you just say he's using both hands to lift the helmet out of the mud and just stares into the empty eye sockets, but then you instantly show Fortis using one hand and using a free hand to brush over the rent in the metal, I'm pretty sure it primes the reader to understand exactly the strength difference between these two characters, which will become important later. And that's just one way of showing, not telling, which is a bit more engaging for your reader. So they're both doing this. I think Fortis will say something. I wonder what wars this void warrior beheld over the course of its existence. Oops. He uttered. I know it never beheld it. I know saw anything. But what did it lay its eyes on? What did it for? What did it fight? How it lived for so long? Huxton added. I know it never saw anything, but what did it lay its eyes on? What did it fight? What did it fight? How had it lived for so long? Right, I want them to think about how at this point they do need a mentor, which triggers them to go and find one. Do you think we're ever... They both continued to inspect, and I can't really say pieces of armour, so let's look to see if I can do something better than that. Oh, there we go. Panoply. No, that's not right. Just thinking of different words for armour. They both continue to inspect the protection. No. They both continue to inspect. Yes, the ancient metal. Wondering about each scratch. And piece and rusted corner. I've been thinking, would we... Okay, who's going to say this? It kind of needs to be with Huxton because he is the human character, which readers, who will probably be human, will empathise with more. I've been thinking, would maybe we were too quick to... No, that's the wrong way to do it. I've been thinking. How do we repeat what we did yesterday? Again, we're not these warriors. We weren't not programmed. We were so it can't be programmed because I'm thinking. Because programmed is, of course, a more tech word. So, we weren't not programmed. Let's get rid of this actually. There we go, that's better. Don't need that. I'm thinking, how do we repeat what we did yesterday? Actually, I don't use that again, do I? Repeat what we did yesterday. We're not these warriors. We weren't slated. No, I don't want programmed. Controlled. Automated. No, that still sounds too technical. We weren't... I don't want to say enslaved because they're not technically slaves because they don't have any sort of sentience. They weren't... We're not these warriors. We weren't imbued. Need to look that up though. Yeah. We weren't imbued with their knowledge and strength. We're starting off with nothing. Huxtonson. Fortis took one more look. Saw himself in the breastplate. And chucked it onto the pile. I can't see myself ever being even as capable as these empty warriors. Okay, so they're both having a sort of sense that they are not good enough, and I've managed to put that across by Fortis looking into the armor, seeing himself. He's almost seeing himself inside the armor, so he just chucks it aside and says, I can't see myself ever being as capable as these empty warriors. So he's got a very low opinion of himself, but it's kind of like he's talking himself out of what he did because he's unsure about his future as some kind of adventurer. Read it in the breastplate, then chucked it into the pile. I can't see myself ever being as capable as these empty warriors. Look, I'm not saying I don't want to get out into the world. Get out. I'm not saying I don't want to get out into the world and help, serve, or fix problems. I just realised I don't know how. I've just realised I don't know how. Huxton. Huxton admitted. No shame there. No shame in that. Fortis quickly said. Quickly replied. I think I feel the same way. So what do we do? So what do we do? Huxton says. So what do we do? Huxton said. Asked. I said. I don't know. I was hoping you would have an idea. I don't know. I was hoping you would have an idea. So I was hoping you would have an idea. The two boys looked away from each other. Fortis put a hand to his face. Huxton bit his bottom lip. Bit his bottom lip. Perhaps we need some adult advice, some adult help with this. Both lads turned to and searched their parents. Huxton's mother was talking to Fortis's father. Both were rather respective. Now, what did I call people who look after the village? I didn't call them guards. I think I called them wardens. So let's go back and double check that. Laces his father. Come on, where's the word? Did I use warden? Yeah, warden. Good. I should do better notes so I don't have to keep going back to chapters to find out what I did before. There you go, little tip for you. Both were the respective wardens of the villages, and they gesticulate as they turned to different. spell fortis correct? Ooh, fortis. Father, both respective wardens of their villages, and they put chief wardens of their villages, and they stipulated as they turned to different parts of the village that had been damaged. With sharp purposeful, energetic-lated with sharp purposeful. Okay, so that doesn't make sense. Pull movements. Doesn't work. What I'm trying now to describe is that like they're like going, yeah, that would do that, but they're gesticulating because they're using their hands with sharp purposeful gestures. But I can't say gestures because that's gesticulated, and they maybe there's another word to use other than signal, purple signals, no, motions, as they turn to different parts of the village that have been damaged. A warden would know what to do. Right. They're very shrugged. Then if they're on the left the pile. We need a fence is what we need. Maybe you should. Maybe you should move the village into the swamp like we did. Ripples, squelches, fleeing animals. Perfect security system. Security. The warden stopped comparing notes on town defence when their children approached, as their children approached. You might notice that I'm not adding as much detail as perhaps I should be, because this is a fantasy, and fantasy relies on detail to set the tone and mood. I'm going to add, it's my pattern to add that stuff later. I prefer a nice skeleton of the story, and then I fill it with all the organs and flesh and blood and nerve and so on. You get the metaphor later. So that's why I'm not describing everything so in the rich detail you expect of a fantasy, especially since that's the fantasy genre, and because this book is going across lots of genres, I'm going to stick to the skeleton approach, so I can go back to each book afterwards and flesh them out how they should be, with the kind of detail you need in a mystery, the kind of detail you need in a fantasy, the kind of detail you need in a science fiction, and so on. So please, as you watch, let me get down the bare bones. Yeah, that's correct. That's the skeleton, and then we'll get to everything else later. That's the way I do it. That's not the way you need to do it, unless it works for you, then in which case do it. But you'll find your own path and your own way. The warden stopped comparing notes on town defence as their children approached. Mother. Father. Mother. Huxton began. Mother, Huxton began. Father. this began. What? Both parents replied. We've been thinking. We've been thinking. We've come on. Been thinking. Another pause. That what we did last night. The action did last night. The helping the village. What we did last night, helping the village, fighting the good fight. I think they can use this kind of language because they're young and it doesn't sound poetic and interesting, but they are kids saying it. We've been thinking, what we did last night, helping the village, fighting the good fight, alongside you. They should be nervous to do it. Okay, hang on a minute. What I haven't established is why they're bit scared of their own parents. Now, I've implied that their parents are wardens and therefore capable fighters, but why would that? Although, actually, previously I have established that Huxton's mother perhaps would, when he accidentally damaged something at their own home, he was scared of what her response would be, so she's a strict and stern parent. So I have kind of established that. By them both going, what? Curtly. Is curtly the right word? Rudely brief. Yes. What? Both parents replied curtly. We've been thinking. What we did last night, helping the village, fighting the good fight alongside you. We want to do that again. Huxton managed to get. Oops. So I'm also trying to type a bit better here. Managed to get out. Yeah, it's that was, it felt good to defend the village. Sorry, the camera's right in front of me. It's actually right in front of the words I'm trying to type. Yeah, it felt good to defend the village the way we did. Like, I think what we want to do. Deep into the eyes of their children, as if both parents stared deep into the eyes of their children, as if their stares would push them away and back to the job they were given, where there'd be no more of this nonsense. Fortis and Huxton. If you're being stared at, what do you do? So someone's like, okay, Huxton's eyes. To one another, they'll rub their hands. Yes, there's no. They looked around for help from others in the village. They got none. But they always looked back at their parents. But they always looked back to their parents. Waited. Finally, when Mother realised glare. glare. Had failed her to send her son scurrying away. Failed to send her scurrying away, she answered. I don't think so. I don't think that's a good idea, son. Whoop. Yes. Stay and I see if I said I was going to say stay, you're too young was Fortis's father would say, but I realise I'm not really giving. Why would they say no? Like, their wardens, their security, is it really strange that their own sons would take on a sort of similar role as them? So I need a reason why they shouldn't do that. Oh, maybe it should be about staying away. If the theme of this entire book, one of the themes, is that, or at least one of the major plot points, is that rather than doing traditional ways of trying to defeat the enemy, which is go on a quest or train until you're powerful enough to defeat them, or find the magic doodah that will ultimately defeat them, it's all about solving, like, if you resolve some of these issues of your general fantasy universe, you deprive the main villain of everything he needs to actually be the villain effectively. And sometimes those kind of changes are the kind of changes you can be cowardly. Like Fortis and Huxton's mother or father they're brave in that they're security wardens, but that's a different kind of bravery, and it's not easy, but it's simpler. And I don't mean simple in terms of stupid. It's just simpler in the sense that picking up a sword and fighting is. And usually you have the enemy in front of you, and it's simpler to do. You don't have to think about it, and it's a clear right and wrong. Defender, attacker, easy. But if you're going to be the person who changes the world, there can be good fights, good action sequences in there, but it kind of involves changing and getting involved with things that are much more complicated, and complicated scares people. So what I think that Fortis and Huxton's mother and Fortis's father and Huxton's mother should be of the fort, and this is their kind of weakness, that it's best to stay out of that sort of stuff. Let's not rock the boat. Let's not change things. So that's... Yes. Hang on, I've got to make it clear what they want to do then. And we want to do it out there in the wild, out in the big town cities. Yes, it's far too much for us to get involved in all that. Fortis's dad said, "Keep it, stay here. We can train. We can train you as wardens. We can train you as wardens. However, so how do I get across that what Fortis and Huxton's mother don't want, like Fortis's these parents, trying to separate these two out. These parents, what they want is they don't want it. Oh, some people have responded to the chat. That's cool. What have I done? Somebody's just going. Okay. Oh, the chat just disappeared. Sorry, someone just said something on the chat. I should see it again. Good. Oh, thank you. Some people have been commenting. Thank you very much, guys. This is slightly... some of these people are probably... This is not a... for those in the chat, this is not like any other live stream. This is what I do when I write a book live. So go watch the other things. And so no, I will not add... Will I add a chicken? Okay. That's not bad advice. I know it's funny, but no, I won't add a chicken. Because, and the reason why is that seems a bit like Moana, where you have a chicken who's going to be your comedic relief. So something else maybe, but not that. Thanks for watching though, guys. I hope you're enjoying this How to Write a Book live stream. There will be other... Okay, I'm interrupting this book from scratch live stream to talk about other live streams that will happen regarding Half Human, The Prison Key, the brand new book that I wrote. The one of a kind book, the first of its kind book, where it's been written with a school. So I'm going to finish up this one. I'm only going to do about another 5 minutes as I finish this writing live. But sorry chat, no chicken. Think of something else. No, you can say please all you want. Chicken wing. They can eat chicken wings. They can like chicken wings. Okay, fine, because of what the chat said. Let me put down here. They love chicken wings. That will be Fortis and Huxton's choice of food. Oh, you can barely see that because I did light green instead of dark green. Okay, the chat has had an effect. It's inspired me. Fortis and Huxton always eat chicken wings. So thank you, chat, for that. Yay! They love it. Anyway, let's finish this off because I can do this for another 5 minutes. I've got to limit these things to an hour. Yes, it's far too much for us to get involved in all that. Fortis's dad said, "We can train you as wardens. However, going out into the world, they've got problems. They've got problems, son. Big problems. Stuff we can't. You won't be able to solve. So stay here. Help your home. Help your home." So that's how. So that gives us a clear indication. It plays into the theme, gives a clear indication of where the parents are coming from, and it's not like they're not trying to be overprotective, which I don't want. They're just like they kind of don't want change, because that's another reason why in stories where you're trying to defeat the villain, and we're trying to defeat the villain by solving all this civilization's problems and taking away the villain's power, it can be so daunting. It requires change, and people are scared of change most of all, even though change is what we need to make things happen. To the two people in the chat at the moment, Henry and Daniel, you have in a small way contributed to this book. Well done. Big problems, stuff you won't be able to solve. Stay here. Help your home. Okay, I'm going to connect it now to the thing I wrote earlier, because it's one of those parts of the book that I wanted to write because it has a certain gravitas, and you can kind of, if I can imagining it happen, it was huge, and I'll get back to that in a second. I need to link it to this part. So Huxton and oopsie-daisy. Fortis and Huxton goat, but pressed on. They still wanted to go out into the world. They knew their weaknesses, and thankfully those weaknesses were not fear of your family and their opinions. I think I have to clear this language up later. It's a good moment where I'm making the point that you can't let your life always be dictated by, like, some people tell you what you should do because it's what they would do, and they can't imagine doing something different, or they're too afraid, and they feel better if they keep others with them when thinking the same way of them. Fortis and Huxton are seeing a bigger picture. They want, and luckily their weakness is that they're able to push past that. Fortis and Huxton gulped. Yep, but pressed on. Actually, no, not but pressed on. Yet pressed on. That's different. Yet pressed on. They still wanted to go out into the world. They knew their weaknesses, and thankfully those weaknesses were not fear of your family and their opinions and their narrow. Okay, I'm going to put this in. Their narrow way. Their narrow way. They expressed their desires, how it had felt to fight, to be, to encourage. No, encourage is wrong. To okay, this chat is good. They expressed their desires, how it had felt to fight to make a difference. The parents responded with their own wisdom that was safe, not wisdom that was safe, not it's not like epic enough. Like, it's kind of wise to just ignore the world, stay in a little village, make your own little life there, and there can't be anything wrong with that. But what is the greater wisdom? The parents responded with their own wisdom that was safe, not. I was going to say not helpful, but it doesn't work like that. They expressed their desires, how in fact to make a difference. The parents responded with their own wisdom that was safe, wisdom that was for other people who weren't Huxton, who want to achieve their goals, not someone else's. Not someone else's. Before I got this to remember. Okay, good. Now I've connected it to the other part that I did want to write. As the arguments, wisdom and suggestions were exchanged, the sun came closer. So this is the part where, if you can imagine, let's go and find that picture of Snakar, where, I'm sure I said this in the last stream we did on this, but it's helpful for you guys just to know it now than rather having to go look. So what Snakar does is, let's make this larger so you can see it. When something pivotal happens in this story, as it happens in the past, his eye gets closer and closer to the world. It grows dimmer, and he looks upon something. So you can imagine the stalk stretching out like a snail can, and he looks down at the world and watches something pivotal happening. And that's what happens now. And I'm going to do a quick read of that section to make sure it connects correctly in a way that feels, at least for now, natural, and my edits later on will smooth it out even more. As their arguments, so I've used the word wisdom a bit, so I need to get rid of wisdom and change it with something else. As the arguments, sage advice, insight, that's better. As the arguments, insight and suggestions were exchanged, sometimes with loud voices, the sun came closer. So the sun coming closer, because the sun of this world is actually the eye stalk of Snakar, the world snail, so to speak. As the shadows lengthened, the shadows lengthened as they would, as the sun is getting closer and closer, and like more down to your level. And the banter didn't stop until the shade of the trees fell over the crowd gathering around. The shadows lengthened, but the banter But the banter didn't stop until the not banter. Banter seems friendly. It needs to be like. But the arguments didn't stop until the shade of the trees fell over the crowd gathering around Fortis and Huxton. Everyone knew what this meant, and the raised voices ceased as one of the twin suns arced over the back of the world. The light dimmed as Nakar protected its creation. That's sort of saying that, you know, if the sun suddenly moved closer, even if the sun was essentially a giant eye, if it moved closer, it would still like burn the world. I've got to prevent that. I kind of implied it rather than saying it. That's showing, not telling, again, in a sort of minor way. The light dimmed as Nakar protected its creation, yet strived to look down and see, witness. I'm going to change that to witness, because then we get indication. The presence of the giant eye of the creator pushed away clouds. Snakar looks upon us, the priest uttered, as the oculus of all that which carries the world watched history happen. I'm gonna end it here. The whole village stared into the eye, wondering. No, I can't see that. It's just eye. Is that for us? Right. It's pretty much. This is the reason why I've written it like this. Is for this particular reason. Hello, guys watching now. Sorry if you're late. This is a different kind of live stream where I am writing a book live. And I'm just finishing off this part of the... Actually, this could be the whole second chapter. So, if I want to talk about why I wrote it the way I just did. The whole village stared into the eye. This is a huge epic moment. As like, imagine God looking down on the world and his eyes really close, looking down, and you're looking up and you're looking into it. There's a huge moment of gravitas about that. But what Huxton is kind of funny in that, is that for us? He's like, a giant eye. Who are they actually looking at? And I kind of want it to be that way because it feels like Huxton's a little humble. Is that for us? I mean, if I had written, for example, actually there's a different way I could have written it. It goes, he could be the kind of person who uses it for himself, stealing the meaning behind it for himself. So he could have said, you see, Snakar is on our side. So he could have said that. And that gives Huxton the sort of character of someone who will use something for his own benefit. What else could he have said instead? You see, Snakar is on our side. I think that tells you all you need to know. And he crossed his arms with a smirk on his face. So I could have written that instead. So I think that tells you all you need to know. He crossed his arms with a smirk on his face. That sort of would suggest that Huxton's the kind of person who... That implies that Snakar is looking at him and is witnessing history, and this is important. The decision they're making, what their parents say, is important. But that makes him to be the kind of person who is a bit full of himself. And these two versions here, I don't want for Huxton. I want it to seem humble, and I can kind of imply that Huxton can say this, and Fortis can be included in it as well. Is that for us? Huxton blurted out, and it kind of like he's unsure, but maybe it is, and I leave the reader basically wondering. Is it for him? Is Snakar looking at this moment in history, taking the time for essentially the creator, the god of this world, to actually look upon something that's happening? Is that for us? Huxton blurted out. It makes him feel a bit more humble, and that's where I'm going to end the stream. I've gone over by 10 minutes, darn it. Oh well, what can you do? Thank you for people in the chat. I'm afraid I'm going to add it. Oh, hang on. Oh, chicken wings. Oh, dear me. Where can I want to respond to people who aren't watching? Where can I put chicken wings into this? Later that morning, was tidying up. Later that morning, there was. This is the only time I can probably add chicken wings into it. or do I wait? No. Unfortunately, boys, I'll make because I know who's commenting. They've commented before like this. I'm gonna leave myself a quick note. In the next chapter, they set off with a batch of chicken wings. If I put this in red, there you go, and bold and bigger. Right, I will put the chicken wings suggestion into this book in the next chapter. I can't organically put it in here without disrupting the flow of the story. So in the next chapter, when they set off, Huxton's mother, here's your favourite chicken wings. Off you go, Huxton, out into the world for adventure. I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for commenting, guys. Yes, you got something into the book. Well done. Go check out the other videos that I've done. I've done quite a few of these lives. 24 now. This is 25. 24 other videos in this live stream. Go check out other writers who are doing Write Live on YouTube. What they do is different to what I do, but my ways might work for you. Their ways might work for you. And I'm going to have to end the live stream there today. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much if you were on the chat. And yeah, just have a good rest of the day. See you next time.